Nobody in society wanted anything to do with them. So the second thing we see, because they were unclean, well, they were also unreliable. They couldn't be used in the courts. Nobody wanted to, you wouldn't, shepherd witness something. You couldn't use them as a witness in court for your court testimonies or anything. So they're unclean. They're unreliable. Third thing is they're despised. You can already get it. People didn't like them. Not entirely sure why, but that's the way they viewed them in that society. So this group of people who are taking care of these sheep are unclean, despised, unreliable, and lastly, and interestingly enough, they were the guys who were literally watching over the sheep that would be used in the sacrifices in Jerusalem. Bethlehem was just down the road from Jerusalem. By just down the road, I mean how Salisbury is just down the road from Myersdale. So it's a few miles outside of town, but it would be out there. They would be watching over these sheep, and interestingly enough, these are the sheep they would be using in the temple to sacrifice to God. So it's odd that the people who were unclean and could not take part of the sacrifices were the ones making sure the sheep were good enough to be sacrificed. At some point, you got to think that as a society, they would have to step back and go, maybe we've got this backwards. But they didn't. And these were these guys. And they were on this one night, just doing their duty, watching over their sheep in Luke chapter 2. So that's the guys that we're talking about here and what they're doing and what they're about. And then we get to verse 9. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them. Now, they're taking care of their sheep. They're doing all of a sudden, an angel just poof right in front of them. Now, I don't know about you, but have you ever been in total darkness, everything's completely black, and then somebody shines a spotlight on you? That's what this would have been like for them. Total darkness. It's not like it is for us now, where there's ambient light all over the place from street lights. They had none of that. They were in the middle of, outside of town, no lights, no nothing. And then all of a sudden, light everywhere. And the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. Because, again, I don't know about you, but if you're standing, you're doing your job, you're all around, a group together, maybe you're trying to get some sleep at that point, and then all of a sudden, a bright light and a man was standing there in your midst, you would be scared. We all would be. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid," which, thank you for leading with that, angel. Don't be afraid. Why? Because I bring you good news of great joy that will be to all the people. The angel's like, don't be scared. Don't be afraid, because I bring you good news. Which, again, I would be thinking if suddenly this guy just appeared in our midst, that he's there to bring us bad news. That he is there to rob us. But this angel is like, no, don't be afraid. Why? Because I bring you good news. What was it? The other times that we've heard the angels say this, don't be afraid. Why? Because he tells Zechariah, because, hey, your prayer, God has heard your prayer. Don't be afraid. God's heard your prayer. Goes up to Mary, don't be afraid. You found favor with God. And then to Joseph, don't be afraid to marry the woman. And then he appears here and says, don't be afraid, because I bring you good news. It's interesting the way that the wording is. He's like, hey, don't be afraid. Why? Because I've come to evangelize you with good news. He's there to tell them something. Specifically, God sent him to bring this news to them and to be the bearer of this news. And it's not just good news for them. It's not to tell them that they've won the lottery. It's to bring good news that's going to bring joy to who? Everybody, the entire world. Now, if you're these shepherds and you are unclean, despised, unreliable, do you ever expect anybody to bring you good news that's for everybody? No. But that's who the angel showed up to give the good news to. He showed up to give it to the unclean and the despised and the unreliable. He didn't show up to give it to those in their pristine castles. He showed up to give it to them. And these are the guys who are getting the news. And he goes on, the angel does, in 11 and 12. What is the good news? He says this, today, in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. To you. He is Christ, the Lord. The good news that the angels come to give them is that in the town of David, in their little town of Bethlehem, where they're right outside of watching these sheep, that the Messiah, the promised Messiah that their people had been waiting for years and decades and centuries for, was here, and he had been born. And the angel's like, look, he's here for you. He's down there. I have come to tell you this. I've come to tell you that your Messiah is here. And for us, 2,000 years later, we read the story and we're like, yes, we know that's what you're doing, angel, because that's the story. But for them, this would have been their first time hearing it. And this would have been amazing, earth-shattering news that the promised Messiah, the promised one who was to come and to save the people, not only save the people, but save the world, was there with them. And they were given that news. That would have been amazing. And now it goes from being, well, we say good news, but maybe that is amazing, fantastic, wonderful, earth-shattering news. And he keeps going. And this will be a sign to you. It's interesting that the angels over and over again, as they came and talked to the people, gave them a sign. To Zechariah, his sign is essentially, you're not going to be able to talk for a while. To Mary, her sign was that Zechariah's wife, Elizabeth, was pregnant, which was a miracle. And for these guys, they're given a sign to you, too. They're given a sign to prove that what the angel's saying is really true. And the angel says, you will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger. Like, have you ever stopped and wondered, why was Jesus born in a manger? Like, why in a stable? If I was to tell you right now that there was a baby born in Myersdale, and you were to rank in your head real quick where you would to go look for that baby at, your first place would be the hospital, right? Your second place that you would look would be a house. Okay, so there's a baby born in a house somewhere. Your third place, maybe a vehicle. All right, you're thinking, all right, maybe somewhere there's a vehicle with a baby. How many of you are getting to the local barn? So if the angel's going to give a sign to them to find that the promised Messiah is there and that that's the baby, the odds are the manger's not the spot that they would be looking for the baby. Because there could have been other babies born that night. There could have been other babies born within the last week, and so they're going through the town looking. But God made it so obvious for them that they could not miss the sign. It's the only baby who they put in a manger. And so again, we look at these stories and we wonder, well, why does God do these things? Well, maybe it's because, shocker, God knows what he's doing. I don't know. By this point, you would think we would get that, but it's still hard for us to wrap our minds around it because we spend so much of our time arguing with God about what he's doing. You know, God can't possibly have any idea what he's doing with it, because life wouldn't be going this way. And yet we see all through the Christmas story where God's like, nope, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And all of it's leading up. And all of it's giving proof to everybody around them that what God's doing is actually happening. And so this amazingly good news is brought to the shepherds. And then suddenly, a great company of heavenly hosts appeared with the angel, praising God. Now, when we say heavenly hosts, sometimes, again, where we, as in our English, this is an army of angels. That's what that word means. So, a host could be those of us in this room. It's a group of carolers coming up and singing to you. But an army, that represents something different. Now, again, these shepherds are probably their hearts are probably just recovering from the fact that they had an angel appear before them and they've been given this news. And all of a sudden in front of them is an army of angels. And they're all saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace to men on whom his favor rests." So what would happen during their culture, and sometimes we see this in movies when we deal with like cultures that have kings and stuff like that. We don't do that here in America, is they would, at the birth of a child, they would send in heralds throughout the land to go and say, hey, the king has a baby, the new king has been born, and we're going to celebrate the fact that our king is born. So all these heralds go everywhere, proclaiming this. And who do they go to, though? They don't go to the slums on the streets. They don't go to the shepherds that are watching their flocks. They go to the important people to announce this, because those are the people that matter. And yet, who did God send his herald to? Who is a much more magnificent group of heralds, right, than what any king would have sent out. He sent out his army of angels to tell who? The unclean, the despised, and the unreliable. That's who God decided to send his heralds to for the Messiah of the world. Like, that doesn't happen. It didn't happen in their world. It doesn't happen in our world now. We don't operate that way. And yet, God does. Why? Because he cares about us all. He doesn't care just about the rich and the powerful. He doesn't necessarily just care about the things that we care about. When it comes to power and money and fame and all that stuff, he cares about us as people. And so when he's starting on earth with this part of his plan, he goes to the unreliable, the unclean, the despised. And sometimes we feel we're not worthy, that we can't do certain things. Oh, I'm not ready yet. I'm not prepared yet to do this or that. And God's like, I know. And that's why you're perfect. God's like, I didn't ask you to do all this stuff and be prepared and to go and do, and you have to get everything lined up before you follow me and do this stuff. He's like, no, I'm going to come to you where you are, when you are, doing what you're doing, and now I want you to have the good news, and now I want you to come and follow me. Like, that's how God operates, which is not how we operate at all. We want to be trained. We want to be ready. We want to have time to do the things that we do, and to work out and really figure out life before then we make those decisions. And if we're going to actually talk to somebody about Jesus, then we need to actually be able to go down the line and do all this stuff, and then we're just never ready enough. And God's like, but you are. If the shepherds were ready, you're ready. And now the shepherds have been given the good news. And it begs the question, what are they going to do with the good news? But more importantly, what would you do if you had just heard that? What would you do with the good news that you had just been given by these angels? I don't know about you, but I would probably, after they disappeared, have a little powwow with my friends, and we would discuss this, and we would try to, this is the way I operate. I would be doing like a pros and cons list about what are we supposed to do with this news? Why were we given this news? They must be going around and telling other people about this news. They can't just be giving it to us, right? And so we'd be talking about this and we'd be having a conversation. I don't know what you would do with it, but let's see how the shepherds respond to it. In verse 15, when the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about. So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who is lying in the manger. The shepherds didn't wait. They had just been told this. They had been told what the proof would be, and they immediately got up and ran into Bethlehem, and they found the baby just as they had been told that they would find the baby. The shepherds didn't wait. When they had been given the good news, they immediately responded to it. The first thing that they did when they were told the good news was they took it in and they responded in a way of like accepting it and immediately responding and moving on it. They reacted to what they had been told. They went and they found the baby. They found the parents. Now, I don't know, it doesn't say exactly what they said when they found them. You can imagine Mary and Joseph probably at this point, no matter what they would have been told them, would have been like, and? Yeah, we know these angels. We know how this operates. You know, we've had an interesting year, and these shepherds are probably like blown away by this, and they're like, I can't. You know that they're thinking, I can't believe we actually found a baby in a manger. I mean, they literally just had an angel tell them that, and yet you know that's what they were thinking. Like, I can't believe this is actually true. This is actually happening to us. Oh my word, this is like the greatest thing ever. And they're celebrating, they're rejoicing, they're responding to what the angel had told them. And then what did they do? Verse 17, when they had seen him, they did what? They went back, went to sleep, just went about their lives. No. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child. The first thing they do then is they go out and they tell everybody else they could see, who they could find. Again, we're talking about shepherds, and we've gone over what were they like and how did people think about them. All of a sudden, these people are running through your town yelling, good news! We have good news! Like, you wouldn't believe what just happened to us. We were just up there taking care of your sheep. Don't worry, they're all fine. And then this angel appeared to us, and then they said that there was a baby. They said the Messiah was born. Can you guys believe that? The Messiah is born? This is like the coolest thing ever. The Messiah, you guys know who the Messiah is, right? Let me tell you all about it. And he's there, and we were told that he'd be in a manger. We went down there, and we went, and we looked, and he was actually in the manger. And this is the coolest thing ever. You got to tell everybody. Like, these are what these shepherds are doing. Like, they are so excited that they had been given this good news, that they wanted to tell everybody and let everybody know that the Messiah is there. And if you see somebody coming up to you like that, you're like, you're like, this is weird. Who acts this way? And especially these guys, don't touch me. I don't want to be unclean. Like let's keep our distance here. And they're like, oh, this is odd stuff. But the shepherds are going and telling everybody what they had seen. Why? Because isn't that what you're supposed to do when you get good news? Like, when you get good news about something, when your favorite team wins a game, are you not celebrating with all your friends? Hey, did you see the score last night? It's awesome. It's like the greatest thing. When you see that funny YouTube video, are you not like, hey, let me spread this to other people? When you get that great Facebook post, are you not sharing it with your friends? Whatever it is that you're seeing, are you not taking that and then immediately sharing it with people? Because that's the thing. Good news was meant to be shared. It is never meant to be kept. And yet, often what we do in our lives is, when it comes to the best news of all, I don't know if I'm ready to share that. It does make you wonder after a while. That we talk about good news, and we talk about Jesus, and we talk about the great things that are supposed to be happening in our lives and what God's doing in us, that we are so afraid of telling others unless it's here within our group, and we know that that other person's a believer and is a Christian and a follower of God, and so they'll naturally trust the things that I say, and they're safe to tell these things. If we're so afraid of telling people the good news that's going on in our lives, and it makes you wonder, how good is it to us? For these shepherds, it was incredible. For us, I'm not even sure if it rates as news at this point, what? So what good's God doing in your life? I guess he's there. Maybe on Sunday, we can talk about it, okay? So, if we believe the gospel literally means good news. And yet we live our lives as if we don't even know what's so good about it. Honestly, think about it. What is so good that the Messiah came into the world as a baby? What's so good about what your life was before you came to God versus what it's like now? What's so good that there's even a God who loves you? And if you can sit there and be like, I don't know, then we've lost the plot. Right? These shepherds got it. Now, the thing is, and you watch this over and over again, when people first hear about the good news, they're usually more excited about it than those of us who have been with the good news for decades. Like, you kind of get comfortable with the news. You kind of get comfortable with God and the gospel. And at this point, it's like, God, come on. Get off my back. I want to live my life. Yeah, you saved me. Can I just get to heaven already? And that's kind of how we live our lives, right? The shepherds got good news, and it was meant to be shared. It's not meant to be kept and hidden. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. They were amazed. You'll notice here, it doesn't say, and everybody went to see the baby in the manger. No, they were amazed by it. But Mary treasured up all these things in her heart and pondered them in her heart. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they had been told. Like, it's amazing, the good news that these angels had given to them. Yeah, I find myself, even every Christmas, we read the same passages, we talk about the same stories. And it's so easy for me, like I even started reading this and I'm like immediately put into like Charlie Brown's Christmas, thing in my head. And I'm like, oh, this is like comforting and everything. And then I forget about what's so good about this news. And yet there's got to be something amazing about it, isn't it? That the Messiah came. That the Messiah came for these shepherds, that the Messiah came for his people, Israel, and that the Messiah didn't just come for them, but he came for us. Amen. Like, you and me, none of us deserved for him to come for us, and yet he did. And that's good news. And so what do we do with this news when we are given the good news? And we've been given the good news. There's two things that you do with news that's this good. First, you receive it, and then you repeat it. Because if you don't do either of those things, then it's just something that appeared out there and somebody just said words to you. And so there's two groups in this room right now. You've either never received the good news that God loves you so much, and that God sent his son for you to be the ultimate sacrifice, or a sacrifice that you can live and have a relationship with him someday. That this God's calling to you constantly, all the time, saying, I'm still here, I'm still here, come with me, come with me. And some of us haven't received that news yet. We haven't taken it in, we've heard it, but we haven't done anything with it. And then there's the other half. If you've received it, then what are you supposed to do with it? Repeat it. Because if you've received it, then that means that God's done something good in your life. Can I say God's done something great in your life? And so then we repeat it over and over and over again, and we tell people about it. And when people come up to you and say, well, what's different about your life? You keep talking about this God thing. Well, what does it matter? You can say, well, look at my life, what it was like before, and this is who I was like before, and look at who I am now. Or maybe you've grown up in the church and you really can't point to, because when you were 4 years old, you weren't in a life of, drugs and alcohol and everything at 4, and you don't know all the sins that you were doing. Your parents will tell you, but you don't know all the bad things that you were doing then, but you grew up in it. Then you can say, this is what God saved me from, because I know who I probably would have been. Like, you have news. Repeat it. Now here's the downside, though. Maybe you've received it, but you're not living it out. And so if you do tell people and they're like, well, what's different between you and me? That's a different issue. And so what do we do with this news? We've got a new year coming up in 2025. So I want to specifically challenge you in this way for this next year. If you open up your bulletins, you're going to find 2 sheets of paper. One Aaron talked to you about already. It's our welcome cards. If you're a guest, please fill this out. This doesn't have anything to do with the good news yet. We're getting there. That's just one of them. Second one is this. It says, My 3 for 2025. On the back of it, it's given you some specific prayer instructions, but here's what I want you to do right now. If you need a pen, our ushers have pens. You can raise your hands because we're not leaving until everybody's filled this out. I'm just kidding. We will leave eventually. I'm not that patient. But I want you all to fill this out. Here's what we're looking for. Year 3, what does this mean? First, you're going to write down 3 people that first do not know Jesus. All right? There are 3 people that do not know Jesus. Second, they are 3 people within what I call your sphere of influence. That's not my term. Actually, I've ripped that off from a bunch of other people. What does that mean? Your spheres of influence are those people that are around you that you have some level of communication and should have some level of influence in their life, like family members. That would be a sphere of influence. Where you work, your friend groups. Say you shop enough someplace where they all know you by name. That would be a sphere of influence. Your sons or your daughter's sports teams and sports leagues, that would be a sphere of influence. Wherever you're around people. So, the 3 people are, they don't know Jesus. You're around them enough where you have regular interaction with them in your life. And third, they are people that you will pray specifically for, and that's what's on your back, these 3 things. You're not just writing down 3 people that you would like to come to know Jesus. You're praying for them, 1, that you will have an opportunity to talk to them about Jesus this year. In fact, not just one time, multiple times. That you're going to be able to interact with them and talk to them about Jesus and communicate with them about who Jesus is and what Jesus has done for you. 2, that you will have the opportunity to invite them to come with you to something, whether that be the church, Grace Community Day, to Wednesday night, or even just to spend time with. You like working on cars, then you invite them to work on a car with you. If you would do that with me, your car will break down in 2 seconds. That would not go well, but I can stand and hold a wrench. So the things that you enjoy doing, bring them along with you. But you don't just invite them to church and then say, hey, come. Oh, it was good seeing you on Sunday morning. No, you go, hey, you come. I will save you a seat. In fact, I'm not just going to save you a seat beside me. I'm then going to introduce you to all the people that are around me so you get to know everybody. It's you come on Grace Community Day and I'm going to hang out with you that day. You invite them to come along with you. And third, you pray that you will have opportunities to serve them. Like the entire point is for you, for the year, to have 3 people that you are specifically targeting. And you may think of 10 people, which is great, but we're going to focus on 3. Because what will happen is if you do this and you are genuinely praying for this, 1, I believe that God will hear your prayer. I do. And you're going to be amazed that God's going to give you opportunities to invite them. That God's going to give you opportunities to talk to them. And that God's going to give you opportunities to serve them. I believe that will happen. And then 2, when you're given those opportunities, it's up to you now how to respond to that opportunity. So how are you going to respond? Are you actually going to do it, or are you just going to pray for it? Because a lot of us are really easy about praying for unsafe people. Well, that's not what we're not just doing that. We're going the extra mile and we're being with them. We're sharing good news. And then the hard work begins, right? Where we've actually got to interact with them. We've got to talk to them, and they could tell us no. Now, if you're like me, this is what makes me a terrible salesperson, is I would hear the word no, and I'd be like, all right, and we're done with that. I will never talk to you about this again. No. You come back, you still talk to them, you still hang out with them, you're still friends. And then the third thing that will happen is faithfulness. Like I said, repeated action. You repeatedly go up to them and you're talking to them. And this looks different for everybody in every conversation. I've had friends that it took me over 10 years to have a spiritual conversation with them. Not because I didn't care about them and I didn't love them. but because it took me 10 years to break down walls with them to where they would then ask me questions. And then all of a sudden, the floodgates open and I'm able to talk to them. And I'm still talking to them and praying for them and praying that they come to Jesus. But if we specifically target 3, odds are we will actually do this with 3 people. The more people you add to your list, the more likely you are to go, well, I sort of had a conversation with 1 and 10, and I ignored the others. Well, all right, let's narrow it down. You got 3 people. And who knows what could happen with that? The odds are, again, statistically speaking, where it goes up a lot, that if you target 3 people and you have those conversations with them, and you are specifically praying for them, that what if one of them actually receives the good news that you're spreading? What if one of them receives it and takes it in? Then what? You got 2 more, or you bump a 3rd name onto the list. Why would that be a bad thing? On Christmas Eve, for those of you who were with us, when we started lighting candles and you started seeing it spreading throughout the room, and we talked about it afterwards, what would it look like if our church was lighting candles and spreading the light throughout Myersdale and this community? Like, how would that look like? This is how we do it. See, we're not going to do it through fancy programs. We're not going to do it through these amazing things. We do it not because they come and hear my amazing voice in preaching, but we do it because of you. You have the ability to spread the news. You are the ones who God's come to and has spread his good news to. It's you, it's me, it's all of us, and it's our light. And if it takes us 6 months to get 1 candle lit, but maybe in the next 6 months we light 2, and then after that we light 4, and then we light 8, and then the snowball just gets rolling, then what can happen in this community if the light spreads because of what we're doing here? So that's what we're going to do. 2025, year 3. What I want you to do, you've got the 2 pieces of paper. First, I want you to write on this one. This one goes home with you. All right? You take it. You write on it, you're 3 people. Then what I want you to do is on our welcome card, even if you're not a guest, I want you to put your name on it, and then under the today section, write your 3 people. So you're writing your 3 people twice. Why do I want you to do this one? Because you're getting backup. We will pray for you here as well. I want to know who your 3 are so that I can be praying for them. Because you're not in this alone. We're all in this together. So in a moment, if you need a pen, the ushers will come around and hand out pens. And take a couple minutes here as we got this song going to write them all out. And then when we're done, I'm going to have you pass all of them in. I'll explain it to you again, how to pass them in. And we will collect these cards here. There's always been a mystery all my life.